Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special podcast today from the LGBTQ plus network at Sky for Pride Month. So today, myself, Adelle, I am a team manager in home service. I'm also the network associate for the field in the network. So I get to promote the network as LGBTQ plus to the engineers and the managers in home service, and I get to get them on board. So it's great to be here today. And also we have Alex. Do you want to introduce yourself quickly, Alex?
Yeah, so my name's Alex, he, him. I work as a sales advisor for mobile cancellations, and I'm an LGBTQIA plus champion in Dunfermline. And yeah, I'm just here to try and get some extra safety tips out there and see what we can find out.
Brilliant, cool. And so obviously, yeah, my pronouns as well are she, her. Thank you for reminding me. I always forget to do that because of any kind of. We always promote it, but I never actually do it. So today we had Vas from Internet Matters, where we're going to talk about certain things to do with safety online, being Pride Month, and looking at ways to be safe online and helping parents look at ways for their kids to be safe online, in particular LGBTQ plus parents or kids, etc. It's kind of a nice way just to kind of look into a world where really, if I'm completely honest, and that's going to probably kind of talk about this soon, I'm kind of a little bit in a bubble. I'm 37, so it's kind of changed over the years. So it'd be quite interesting to find out there. So Vas, would you like to introduce yourself? Much better than how I introduced you.
Yes, of course. Thank you. My name is Vas, and I work as the SEO and digital marketing manager at Internet Matters. So at Internet Matters, we create resources and support parents, carers, and teachers on online safety and keeping children safe online. This is a great opportunity, I think, being Pride Month, that we talk about how parents can support their children navigate the internet. Because, well, personally, myself as part of the community, and well, my pronouns are he, him as well. So, and yeah, growing up, I didn't have that opportunity because, well, I'm a kid from the 90s, so I had to explore other options to find my identity and be part of the community. So yeah, I'm really glad we're doing this today.
So I'm obviously a kid from the 90s as well. So obviously, being 37 and part of the LGBTQ plus, I've kind of worked with. But my story is a little bit different because I come out later in life. So my journey through the internet's been, and we're probably touching it later, I didn't have a great time as a child with the internet when it was brand new, trying to find things online. So it's completely shifted around. Like for kids nowadays, I think good and bad. I suppose obviously you could explain that and work out ways to be safe. I think we need to make it clear to everybody when we talk about these matters, these are ideas, right? These are ways to be safe. These are ideas to implement. These are things you can think of, because it's really kind of made me thinking of how my kids, because I have kids myself, can be safe online with LGBTQ plus parents. I mean, my kids are not LGBTQ, they're part of the community because of me by default. And you do hear in the media a lot, don't you, at the moment, let's protect the kids, and it's all about the kids. And it's kind of hard for, say, trans people at the moment with the media sort of byline that they're using, and they always say about the protecting kids and such. So I think maybe should we start off talking, and this podcast is going to be quite laid back. We're not going to kind of make it question time because I'm not that stern. I'm a little bit frizzy when it comes to it. I'm very hot as well. You can see I'm really sorry. So one thing I wanted to bring up, and I suppose this is one thing that's probably high up on my agenda, and you could probably help here. And I know Alex has got something to say about this as well. The misinformation online that's available to kids. Do you hear that a lot, like how kids are getting misinformed?
Yeah, that's a big issue that we discuss quite often within the content team as well. I think also one of the most interesting things that came out of our tracker is basically, I don't remember the exact percentage, but I do remember the outcome that a lot of the kids, for example, are using social media as a search engine. So instead of using Google to find a response or an answer or and very important information. And I guess especially in the LGBTQ plus community, they just go over to TikTok and they just type something up and they get a video that it's supposed to answer the question, which of course it doesn't give them any support, or it's not any, you don't know if that response actually is a real response and if where is it coming from. So there are many ways you can filter that. I think the most important thing we need to keep in mind is language, and that is a thing across everything that we try to find online, whether it's something we read or it's something we see in social media. Does it come from a blog? Does it come from someone who's actually an expert that has a background, has experience? And then again, it's about cross-examining information, never just hear one source. But yeah, fake news and fake misinformation is a massive issue.
I mean, I would say that since I've grown up around the internet and like as the internet was kind of growing, I'm 30, by the way, just throwing it out there. And so when I was growing up as a young kid and a young gay kid, I found that the internet was a really helpful place for me to find places where I could talk about these things, where I never felt like I had that area of expression. But the problem came is that there was also a lot less protections online, and so you had no idea who was on the other end. And when my parents saw me on there, they just assumed I knew what I was doing and kind of left me to it. And you end up getting sort of exploited in that regard. And I think that the problem is with these sorts of search engines and things is that there's a definite problem with algorithms where they kind of take you to a certain area of content that you agree with, and then suddenly you have this bubble of people that can keep providing misinformation on certain subjects, or even just giving like really, really like horrible viewpoints from a certain area. And there's an element of media literacy, obviously, that I think we were talking about there, that comes into it, and like knowing where to go. But I sometimes worry as well that parents can be just as susceptible as this as kids. And we've seen quite a lot, especially with a lot of the trans issues and things that have been going on. A lot of it came from Mumsnet, which was a way of parents trying to keep kids safe. And suddenly it became like a fear circle where people were wanting, or people wanted to protect kids, but they became so fearful of a certain specific thing that it started feeding itself and became this huge issue. And so I worry and I wonder, like sometimes there can be also like, it's so difficult with internet safety because you can sometimes go too far in one direction and you're hypersensitive to fear, and then there's the other direction where you just let anything happen. You have no idea where they're going to get to. So yeah, I don't know if you've have any like experience with also teaching parents the same media literacy as the kids as well.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same for parents as well. Parents need to be educated all the time about those issues. If anything, they need to be more educated than their children so they can support them. In terms of, I think because you mentioned something before about this type of content just being in a way recycled and just keep popping out into their feed. I think this is where parental controls and certain settings can come really into place, so they can monitor their feed and really understand what is that type of content they really see. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, like to do it, but again, you need to know how to use these software and this software and stuff, and sometimes that can be really difficult for people, because I'm lucky that I grew up in the internet era and grew up with technology, but my sister's older than me and struggles a little bit more with the internet. Yeah. And so like even just like the ability to interact with technology can sometimes be a big barrier to that.
Yeah, no, there's certainly a digital literacy issue that we've discussed as well at Internet Matters, and I think something that we are trying to do within our website that hopefully we can support parents that are not as trying to find the right word really. They don't know exactly. They're not as comfortable with using certain features within the internet or certain devices. So we've created our parental control guides in a way that they can easily read through them and set them up based on different children and their needs, whether there's different age groups or gender. So we are understanding that issue. And I think that's a big issue that you raise actually. Because sometimes we take into we take for granted that, oh, it's the internet, everyone knows how to use it, but actually not everyone knows how to use certain things.
I think from the first days of it, it was self-learning, wasn't it? So internet's always been self-learning when it got created. I know I learned how to use it over time. I mean, I was never taught it at school, and it was very basic back then. And when you talk about obviously information flying back there, I remember back in the day of the internet trying to find information and stuff, especially with LGBT when I was starting to question, I was finding very limited resources. It was very quiet, and it would take me down a path which I didn't really want to go down, get associated with a side that's kind of like sexualized, fetishized, and almost put in a corner. And then over time, it's got better and better, and the tribes have kind of come about. People have been more open, but at the same time, it's like anything, when you open up sort of the floodgates, more bad stuff can come in too, right? And then it all gets mixed in. So I remember anything I used to read on the internet back in the day, I believed 100%. Now I don't believe hardly anything I read on the internet. I have to kind of like you said, fact check, look back, see if it's on sources which I trust. And I think that's probably a good thing for parents to know, right? It's what resources, what areas they can trust to get the information. And I'm not just saying like BBC News or Sky News or anything like that. I'm talking about certain areas of where they can get the right information, which is not propaganda. Mumsnet, and I'm not just posting something like you were saying. And also, we're going to talk about the negatives of it all, but what are positives? What are the good things that parents can do to help their kids or themselves, really?
Yeah, I agree. I think as you said, like, we spend quite a lot of time in this time and age to kind of discuss about the negatives of the internet, and we don't really consider, okay, of course there are the negatives, but there are ways we can really guard that, and we can protect children and ourselves from whatever that is, whatever sits in there. But also so many positives that well, I guess like my generation didn't have access to, for example. And how can kids, and particularly LGBTQ plus children, can benefit from? So there's a lot of there's a big space where they can express their identity. There's a big space where they can explore their identity, because as we know, the LGBTQ plus spectrum is a spectrum, it's not black and white. There's a community as well there that I feel like there's a massive community. So of course there's dangers within that community, and people that of course might want to take advantage of you. And I think this is where parents need to be educated and supported.
I mean, like, looking back to where I was, I didn't have a lot of positive outlets, and certainly the internet gave me a whole vast thing where I felt connected. I found people that had similar opinions, like, or even felt similar things. You know, I found other gay people that I could talk to and really express myself. And so that, like, the internet is so important and integral to like our modern day lives. It's almost like if you tried to live without it, it would be almost impossible at this point. But I do worry, especially when it comes to gay issues, that, like, for example, when I was younger and I wasn't sure what I was or how I was feeling, you know, I was looking up, you know, gay things, finding out for myself where that was. And I do worry sometimes that as we get closer and closer to like protecting kids, we also become closer and closer to just barring them off and preventing them from having their own privacy. You see a lot of stories online of especially gay kids who are looking up something and their parents find out, and you know they're constantly monitoring their stuff. A, it's an invasion of privacy, but B, you know, sometimes we need a safe space to explore these things, because our family isn't always going to be protective. And so, you know, I also want to kind of advocate for a sort of a privacy and autonomy approach as well, just because a lot of parents think danger, you know, I have to micromanage every single little interaction. And that can, you know, you'll find as well, or what I've found is that kids tend to be a lot more honest with parents if they're given the space to breathe and just told, you can come to me, rather than saying, no, you can't do this, you know. So it's a learning curve. It's a very, very difficult learning curve. Feels like you could fall off at either side, but it's good that we have resources out there to kind of help. I don't know if you've kind of experienced many parents who who've either gone too far or are not sure where the like they need to step in. Like at what point is it too much?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think something that I might bring up quite a lot in our chat, but something that we need to always keep in mind is conversations is a key term. Conversation is really important. I think it's really important to have those conversations with your kid, whatever this type of conversation it is. Some conversations are a bit more uncomfortable than others. And as you said to your comment, I think it's very important to practice critical thinking. This is something that you have to slowly build with your kid, depending on, again, their age group. At Internet Matters, we have a lot of resources that we can support you to find more information and tools to work on different quizzes to help you and your child develop that and practice critical thinking. I think, as you said, it's not, because as you said, like the internet is such a massive source, and you can only gatekeep as much as you can. And it's not even a good thing to gatekeep because they need to explore to some extent. But how do you help them with that? I think it's just that, practice critical thinking.
I think, I think that's really important, because I think what we sometimes forget is there is that element of, we want our kids to explore and be themselves, and we don't want to, mollycoddle them all the time. But at the same time, it is our duty to protect our kids and look after them and not put them in any position where they could be harmed. And I think what I'm kind of missing is when I say kids, maybe we're all thinking of different ages. Do you know what I mean? Because all kids can, from the age of, I don't know, the minute they can get a tablet, kids now get tablets from the age of 4, right? Even though they're not reading, they're not reading stuff from, the Onion, or they're not going on to like NSBC and all, and looking at all that stuff. But they will always have the access, like even kids YouTube and such, right? They will always have that access because they'll be doing it that way. And then you go to the kids, like, because I'm thinking about my kids, and my oldest is nearly 10, loves YouTube. And watches the gaming videos. I think everyone probably knows that's a massive trend, gaming videos. But then my daughter as well, she's like 6 years old, and she watches these random videos of these like American adults like doing like funny games and pranks and stuff, and it's aimed at children, and it's all harmless. But it kind of helps you think, like, this leads into a false sense of where they could go. Like, I have to have a different conversation with my son about what he's watching, and to be careful, and different conversation with my daughter about what she's watching. And then people will sit there and say, I've got 14-year-olds who, like, they do not believe a single word. You know what it's like as a teenager. You don't want to trust anything parents say. I don't believe anything, right? You could tell them the sky is blue. They'd say, no, it's not, it's yellow. Like they straight away would argue. And when you ask them, where'd you get that from? TikTok. Someone on TikTok told me. Like, and then it's hard, isn't it, to battle the fact that they're going to rebel, right? Teenagers are going to rebel against you. And the problem is they're rebelling against you with the internet. So they're getting all the information from the internet. They're getting false news, fake news, and then it's obviously down to like the parents just to kind of keep an eye and go, okay, well, that's come from such and such, that he's not a reputable source, and such, right? I think that's always a good way of looking at it, because I suppose being LGBT discussion right now, it covers a lot of things like gender, sexuality, sense of identity, etc. But it also kind of covers the toxic masculinity, the hyper femininity of a lot of things. Now, a lot of people listening to this may know exactly who I'm going to mention now. But there's certain social media sort of present people out there. Andrew Tate is one which has created almost, I don't want to say cult, but he's created like a following, and the stuff that he has promoted and that has really been detrimental to the LGBT world, because he's been very hyper, femininity is femininity, toxic masculinity is the future. Do you hear that a lot about parents being worried about that, or not even knowing who that is and think he's just some kind of cool YouTuber?
Yeah, no, that's a big issue. Misogyny is a big issue, and reverse misogyny as well is a big issue as well. What we've seen, which is very interesting, is that I think it affects boys and girls equally, but in very different ways. So again, because of his lifestyle, and let's just not just use Andrew Tate in this as an example, but there are a lot of other celebrities that have this type of lifestyle, and they share the same principles, let's say. So I feel like their lifestyle draws people in a way that boys just receive the message directly, and then female audience is receiving it as part of news stories. So in one way or another, it affects both audiences. Something that also is very interesting, I think people of power can have or influencers in that case, can have quite a lot of impact within the LGBTQ community. I was looking at the other day, I was just scrolling on TikTok actually, and for some reason the algorithm showed me Jeffree Star. And for example, I heard him criticizing strongly the use of different pronouns, which for me that sounds like a very not healthy thing to do, especially from someone who I think identifies as part of the community. So I think it's a broader problem that we see at Internet Matters quite a lot, and it doesn't just stop with people like Andrew Tate. It just, I think, goes deeper within the community to some extent as well.
I think I think as well, on top of that, it's like these communities are very insular in the sort of bubbles that they create. You know, you get in, suddenly this guy has one other person on that has the same views, then you get links to their channel, and you kind of like develop a community. I think a lot of it is this desire for us, because we're social creatures. We like to get approval of people around us. We want that sort of social interaction, and so it's really interesting to note just how quickly these communities build and how insular they become. But the problem is when they become like hateful or detrimental. Like one of the big problems with Andrew Tate is not only is he influential because he was a boxer, and you know he has like all these big fast cars and can show off the lifestyle and brings on like pays women to come on and agree with him. So it all looks in like this perfect way that he's got life figured out. And so it's very hard for like someone who's struggling to find a community. A lot of the time online spaces are really good for people who are struggling like with social like being social in person as well, and they can you've seen it as with like the rise of like the incel group, which is, for those that don't know, involuntary celibacy, which is like that they're being restricted from access from this thing, and so it all kind of feeds in. And I think that there's a certain aspect of loneliness that comes in on top of it, and I wonder if there's more that we can do in terms of accepting like or finding ways to deal with that on top of everything else. There was one other thing that you mentioned, Adele, as well. I was just thinking back is when we were talking about like when you hear people talking about reputable sources and finding things that you don't know. I think it's also very important for us to remember that we can be wrong about what we know as well. If we can say to someone, like it provides such a layer of trust if we say to like our kids or something, they find something and you're like, actually, I didn't know that. That's really cool. I changed my mind on that. I thought differently, because it opens up this ability that you respect them. And I think that allows for better communication. And it can be really hard, because I'm sure there's some kids that go on and find absolutely nothing that's true, that have fallen into these little rabbit holes, and they suddenly think that women are out to get them. But like, there will be something somewhere that you can agree on. Like a lot of this stuff, they'll to provide legitimacy, they'll come up with real facts. Like, for example, like male suicide rates, for example, and they'll say, look, men have it really bad because of this. And if you can say, oh, well, I didn't know that actually, that's a really good thing that we can look at together, because they care about it. They do want someone to like acknowledge they care about it. It might have come from a really bad place, but you can separate it and you can kind of say, well, I agree with that, but I don't agree with this. And I think that helps prevent it from polarizing. I think a lot of the time we get into these things where it's like me against you, I have this, you have that. That's where we're at. And that can be really worrying as well, because it turns it into a war rather than like a communication process and something that you can get through together. Just thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree, because I live by the mantra and the understanding that I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert at all. I didn't go to university on trans. You know what I mean? I didn't have to like pass a test or anything. I'm not an expert, but I do. I'm I make myself, and I suppose that's what Pride Month is all about, right? It's about putting yourself out there, learning, educating yourself, relearning. I mean, when you're like in your late 30s, going into your 40s, you've got to start relearning about things because the world is different than it was 20 years ago. So things I thought were true are not true. Things that I'm relearning and learning, I go on, I'm a bit more patient now, so I will go online and find things and look at certain sources and try and kind of determine. And I think I'm pretty good at knowing whether something is false or something is ridiculous. I would never just read a title and just be like, oh, okay, I'm going to clickbait. I'm never going to just trust that. I'll always read the story. And trust me, one paragraph in, you can tell whether it is a completely made up story or it's fluff or there's no true story behind it. I mean, you can tell usually. But then again, I have to remember, not everybody can. Some people read A, black and white, A and B. That's exactly what it is. And I think that is the worry, isn't it? Of kind of getting the wrong information out there, or thinking that you're an expert, going, well, I've been on TikTok and I've learned all these things about what bisexual people are like, and this is exactly what they're like, and here's some facts. No, it's TikTok. It's not, it's just some random person putting together some funny memes and stuff. And I suppose that's the way of it. And I love the internet. And I suppose you work for Internet Matters. You're going to have like a really good sort of connection to the internet. You just want it to work for everyone, don't you? You just want everyone to be safe and use it correctly.
Yeah, because the internet is such it's a great source of information. I don't like the greatest source of information, I think, today, because it's not about the libraries anymore. It's just going to Google or any other search engine and just type away, or even social media apps, as we know that. I think it's just about making sure that everyone stays safe and makes the most of it online. And especially since it's Pride Month again, and we're talking about LGBTQ plus young people, there are dangers across everyone, whether you identify as part of the community or not. But I feel like the thing that it's different is that there are unique harms that sit within the community that you won't be able to see in young kids that they do not identify as part of the community. And that's where parents need to stay a bit vigilant, if I say, informed and educated.
Yeah, I think for gay people online, obviously there's a lot of there's been centuries and centuries of discrimination that we're trying to fight against to try and make sure that we know that we're here, that that we're respected and that people understand, and just that to keep us safe and happy is the main thing. And so that's the whole point of Pride, is to show that we're that we're happy with who we are and we don't need to prove anything to anyone.
Yeah.
But it can be very hard if you're in that community as a kid and you see all this content and you can lose that connection. And I think it's really important as well that we say that like anyone can join Pride. Like, it doesn't matter if you're gay or not. If you're part of the community, you can be there to enjoy finding new experiences, to open your worldview, or even just to say, hey, I'm proud of being happy with who I am. You don't need to be gay for that. You don't need to be part of the label, because we all know people in our lives that are different from us, that come under different labels and banners. And we want to make sure that we understand as much as we can and we help as much as we can. And I think that sometimes it can be a bit combative. I think sometimes when it comes to being online, I'm sure I've been guilty of this as a gay person, where someone says something that is slightly homophobic or slightly transphobic, and instead of me asking, well, where does that come from? Is there any way that we can talk about this or understand it? Instead, it's more of a right, okay, well, attack mode. And it's understandable because we get defensive, because it's it's part of who we are as beings. It's integral to our sense of selves, and so it's understandable that we get defensive. But I think sometimes there are opportunities that we have to bring people over to say, to quell the sort of the combative nature of it. It's not easy, and I'm not not blaming anyone that does react defensively, but I think it is important to think about, because I'm sure there are people out there who are suffering, who feel like they're not happy in themselves, and they wish they could express these things. And I really like Pride, and that it's given me a lot of opportunities to say, yeah, no, I'm happy with who I am. I'm really happy that I've come out the other end, and that I'm proud of where I'm at. And I think that everyone can benefit from that, not just the LGBT community.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. I think what is very important there as well, that it plays a very important, very crucial role, I think, in today's kids, and particularly in our community that we're talking about, is self-image. And I think somewhere there is also AI that kind of sits in there, and it's lurking, it's approaching a bit like, yeah, because, you know, we all seen online the perfect world, the perfect people, but to what extent is that real and not? And that's how you kind of don't know anymore how to build that confidence.
Yes, it's individuality, isn't it? Online, it's creating your own. The problem is you could fall into a trap of having your own persona online, which isn't who you are. People can fall into catfishing, and there could be a lot of catfishing in terms of when it comes to the LGBTQ community. Sometimes it's it's not on purpose. They just put such a filter on that they look nothing like the person that they actually are. I mean, it's just, well, trust me, there are trans people out there. We've all done it. We all had a time where we just only had a filter on, and then before we moved on. But again, it's then, you know, when I think, like Alex was kind of saying, there's people that could take advantage of you, right? When you were younger, trying to find the right people online. And then there are people out there that use the community in the wrong way, and they use it as a self-fulfilling sort of side of it, which could be unsafe for, when I say kids, again, I'm going to start talking about 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, right? Talking about them when they're a bit older and they're starting to use certain apps, yeah. So a question, I suppose this could be a question when it comes to sort of the safety of maybe like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. They're still kids to a degree. You're still a parent, you're still looking after them. There's all these apps, they come out of nowhere, these LGBTQ plus dating apps. There's hundreds of them. You've only got to go on the Google store, the Apple store, and find them. And the problem is you're talking to anybody. But there's a sense of need, of wanting to feel needed and wanting to feel wanted and feeling part of something that, you know, my fear is obviously that people will just fall for that, and it put them in a weird position and an uncomfortable position or dangerous position. And parents will always think of that, won't they? They'll always worry about that. Do you think there's anything out there that parents can kind of know? Because I suppose Pride Month, there's a lot of focus on it. Parents might have kids that have only just started to open up. It could be their first Pride, yeah? So this is their first Pride Month. They're celebrating who they are. Is it like, maybe, is there any like resources you have like in sort of that you could probably push people towards, say, look, if they're downloading these apps, look at these apps, just, you know, these are the sort of things that they are, rather than just sort of, because it's quite awkward asking your son, daughter, or whatever, say, oh, what dating apps have you got?
I think well, the actionable thing there would be, again, they're reaching their adulthood, I'd say, slowly, but again, device settings, to just, you know, they're there to help parents even at that stage of their life. Unfortunately, though, I would stick to conversations. I know it's a very awkward conversation to have, but, well, I had that conversation with my parents. It was equally uncomfortable. It was me coming out to them. You just kind of have to do it, be part of the process, try to understand them. And I think to some extent what we all need to keep in mind, as long as they are safe, they need to explore that part of their life as well. I know it's an awkward conversation, it's an awkward thing to consider. I'm pretty sure my parents were thinking the same thing about me. I'm going to think the same thing about my kids, but it's something we have to keep in mind.
I think that with parents on that respect, we catastrophize, right? We're going to catastrophize, aren't we? Everything like, or everything is dangerous, like, you know, everything is the stranger danger sort of thing. But like you said, like, we have to live our experiences. But I suppose maybe it's just have the conversations, look into these apps a little bit more, have a bit, not say spy on them and ask them to show you pictures and stuff, but make sure that they can feel safe and keep you updated, and not feel like they have to hide it or have it be something in the background.
Also, the other thing that I think is very, sorry, Alex.
No, go ahead.
That it's very important is, I think, especially in that phase, is have an open door policy. So make sure that they can always come to you for whatever the reason is. I think if you make that clear, as a parent, you're set for life, literally. Because then whenever there's a situation, or whenever they feel harassed, or whenever there's whatever type of situation within a dating app, or not even a dating app, it could be just in the social media world, they can always come and reach to you and discuss about it and find the best solution to this.
Yeah, I think the gay community actually has, because there's a lot of barriers that we've broken down because we needed to. You know, there's a lot of things that are accepted in the society. You know, you don't talk about these things in front of your parents, sort of thing. It does help, genuinely does help, when it comes to having that sort of conversation and having that sort of that dialogue. It means that, you know, when they need to come talk to you about things, it's I find it's really important that you have that sort of supportive conversation. Like, for example, maybe, like, I know when I was younger, like, there was advice for dating apps. It's like, oh, you know, try and meet in a public space or whatever. Maybe, I don't know if you might agree with this, but maybe something like, just say to your kids, like, hey, feel free to let me know if you're going on a date, so that someone knows where you are. You don't have to, like, don't force them, but just like, because A, it reinforces the fact that they've got agency, and B, it then, if they do that and you go out, you've got knowledge and knowing that where they've gone and what's happening, because it can be really scary, and it can be really worrying when these things happen. But I know, like, I have put myself in danger quite a few times because I felt like I couldn't talk to my parents at all. My dad was very bad with me being gay and really couldn't deal with it, and so there were times I snuck out. There were times that I lied about where I was going, and you know, it genuinely did put me in danger quite a few times. And yeah, I kind of wish that when I was younger that I had someone just to say, hey, if you need to talk about something, it doesn't matter what it is, just please let me know.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have really helped in those situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think because yeah, again, like I kind of got that relationship with my family, my parents, when I was way older. So it was in my kids in my years as a kid. So yeah, and I think something we all need to keep in mind, and parents in particular, is like everyone, whenever they're in danger, their first instinct is to just go back to their family, go back to their mom, talk to their dad. So if there's that open door policy, they're always going to reach out to you, and that's I think something we need to keep in mind when it comes to these.
Speaking on something I really like about the internet, though, video games. Like, video games were such a great escape for me when I was younger. They helped. I went online and played games online with people, found some gay people through like game groups where we would get into guilds and like have big massive matches. It was great. It was good fun. But I worry nowadays with the way that gaming goes, and certainly on the internet, it is a lot more dangerous in terms of getting people addicted to certain habits. There is, you know, a trend in the last like 5 to 8 years where we've got a lot of games where you have to wait a long time before you get progress. They're all made to be free, and they were designed to be so that you would be stuck to it and try to have all your attention, because on the internet, that's kind of like the main money source is your attention. They want your attention. And so I don't know if you have any advice for parents that are going through this, but I've seen it from like, my sister has a carer, and her kids are on like a football coach app where they buy packs of players. You know, they just keep gambling and keep gambling. Problem is it feeds into this sort of like habit where they slowly build up this natural desire to gamble more and more.
Yeah.
And then you have like pathways on the internet like Twitch that started using channel points. Twitch is a site that you go on and you watch people play games or talk or whatever, and it's good fun. It's good for community building. You know, you get some really good interactions. But the site itself has introduced this thing for the people who are in chat watching the content to interact with each other, where you bet on what's going to happen. And it doesn't give you anything. Like, the points mean nothing. They don't give you anything really. There's no monetary value, but they have advertisers that take people from that environment and advertise for things like, you know, Bet Casino or, you know, different websites. And so there's this horrible little trail of trying to like target kids and get them into a lifelong habit of gambling. And I don't know if that's something that you've picked up on your side from the Internet Matters, or whether that's something that you know much about.
Yeah, we've actually created a lot of content around NFT and crypto and loot boxes and just gaming and how it's linked to gambling. There's a lot of information, again, you can find on Internet Matters. Some of the things you need to keep in mind, I think on a higher level, it's quite important if your kid likes playing games. I think it's very important to play around with them, understand the game, understand who they are online, understand who they are, what they're getting out of it, have that conversation of what sparks joy when you are playing that game, so you can really understand what is the dangers or not really. Because like talking from experience, what I really always enjoyed into gaming was the customization features of the characters, because I could be whoever I wanted to be. So, but some of those features were not free, so there was a bit of an issue for me. Again, there's in almost every single game, there's parental controls. So again, you can have certain settings that you can limit their spending. But yeah, there's a lot of content around that, and it's certainly a big issue. And within the LGBTQ plus community, it's again, I think it affects every kid, even outside the community. But I think again, there's unique harms within the community.
Mm-hmm. I think from what I know about it is that obviously they're free games because they're designed to try and attract people in who don't have a lot of money to spend on more high games. And unfortunately, when it comes to LGBT people, just because we're less likely to have stable families, we're less likely, there's chances that we're being thrown out. As a whole, as a population, we have lower wealth standards. Economically, we're poorer than most other classes, which means that we are more targeted by this and we're more isolated from that. And with a lot of these things with gambling, it's about insecurities and hopes and that feeling you get that kind of gives you that dopamine rush. And if you're being bullied, if you've got you go online and you see people like hate speech, all this stuff, it does feed back into it, and it's understandable why these things work at getting and trapping kids into this sort of cycle. And it's sad to see, because I want the internet to be somewhere that is far more positive and something that we can get so much out of it. Like I can go online and find out anything about I have ADHD, and I love the fact that I can go online and find about 8 different subjects and have a cursory knowledge in all of them. But it does worry me at just how much these internet spaces are kind of trying to monetize as much as possible, and it doesn't matter what age they are. I was very sad to hear that we didn't outlaw loot boxes, which is the kind of official term for it in gaming, in this country, for games that are aimed towards kids. I think that there's games that are 3+ football games that should, if they're advertised 3+, I just don't think they should. I don't think that's morally right, but just something to keep in mind for parents out there, because sports games are really popular, and there's some pretty bad horror stories of thousands of pounds going down these on a parent's credit card. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing that it's important, again, I feel like once you get involved into, I feel like every parent that has a kid that enjoys gaming should be involved in the gaming process, more or less. And again, as part of that process, they can help them develop again and work on that critical thinking that we discussed again before. It's a long process, and I feel like, especially for the LGBTQ plus community, I feel like gaming again can help you find this sense of community, especially as a kid. And if you struggle finding that community outside that, and again, as a parent, you can really help them navigate and give them other options. You can look at your local community perhaps and support them interact with people within the community face to face. In our inclusive digital safety hub, we have quite a lot of information for parents to be able to get quite a lot of actionable tips on how they can support their kids. And of course, game online, because, well, I enjoy gaming online and there's nothing bad about it, but at least do it safely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So I could talk all day about this, because everything is just, it's a constant stream, right? We use internet it's part of our daily life. Like, just for example, my electricity went down the other night, and I was like, oh, I can't even check anything. What am I going to do? And then thankfully I had 4G on my phone, so I can still use the internet. That's just so sad for a 37-year-old to be sit there and like almost like buckling under the pressure of like, if I had no internet, what would I do? And I probably didn't know that about myself. I probably did not realize that, you know, there's an addictive sort of nature there, but we need to utilize the greatest part of the internet and make sure we use it for our benefit, right? You ain't got to use everything. It's like anything. I'm not one of those people that says the world's there to be travelled. No, I don't believe it is. There's parts of the world we should steer clear of, leave it. There's no need for us to be there. And I think that's the same with the internet. There are plenty of places on the internet we don't need to be. We don't need to go there. We, you know, make it safe for us. We can use it to our benefit and use it to what's best for us. I suppose, obviously, like, sort of finish off, like, could you just give us some more information about how people could find all this information, how they could not just use it as a one-off and then go, oh, I'm an expert now, I'm the internet king, I know exactly what I'm talking about. What sort of things can they sort of find on the website?
Well, of course, again, they can visit Internet Matters and get all types of information for kids that identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community, or even if they don't. We have all sorts of resources on gaming, misinformation, gambling, NFTs, and crypto, self-image, and how to build up that confidence. Again, there's a lot of quizzes that kids can do and activities that parents can do with their kids, basically, so they can practice that critical thinking, as we talked about before, practice understanding what is fake news and what is misinformation, I don't remember the name of the quiz, but yes, there's a quiz there now. Sorry to everyone that listens to this and works at Internet Matters. Yes, and also for further support, there's other charities and organizations that can support, like Digital Label, or Childline has, I think, also a messaging board, because I know, like, some people don't want to call. I don't like calling, I like texting, I like messaging, even voice noting. So there's other resources that they can use to get support. I think what we need to keep in mind is that the internet is a great world. It's a great tool that we should be using. We need to be aware that all those dangers that exist in the world outside of the internet, they also exist within the internet. And yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Education, relearning, and I suppose maybe a word is the assurance. There's assurances out there that you can look at things to protect not only yourself but your family members and whatnot. So don't be too scared of the internet, but at the same time, don't trust it with open arms. I would say don't let yourself too loose on there.
It's fine balance, like you said, like educate yourself. Yeah,
like anything, right? Like anything. But thank you for coming on to this podcast, Vaz. It's been really good, really interesting. And thanks, Alex, as well, for jumping on, and some really good bits there. And obviously, thanks everybody for listening. And obviously the people in the background that put this together. So obviously we just did the talking. They've done the edit. So so thanks for coming on, and hopefully speak to you soon.